everyone. Welcome to the Solar Astrology Podcast, our second episode, which we called Aries First, because Aries does come first, as a matter of fact. And we are recording this on March 30th at around 3 o'clock, 3:08 to be exact, Central European time.
And we also plan to do a series on the sign of the zodiac as the astrological season move forward. So we wanted to start our podcast with the Aries episode in Aries season, and so Aries first. Aries is a sign ruled by Mars. It's the exaltation of the sun, and Aries season is the beginning of spring. It's the marker of the beginning of spring, of this new season in which light takes over darkness. And we enter in the young half of the year, a way to say, in the masculine, in the active, in the luminous part of the year. And it's the young sign of Mars.
Yes, and also you've mentioned that it's the exaltation of the sun. Why should we not talk about why it is the exaltation of the sun? You already briefly mentioned, the light returning. So what exactly does that mean, and why is the sun exalted there?
Yeah, I guess that the sun is exalted there because there is just light is coming back. Of course, the sun is going to be happy there. It's the sun is just so happy that light is turning back, and that's why the sun is exalted there. And Aries is cardinal fire. It's a cardinal sign, which means that initiates thing. In fact, cardinal signs initiate the season. We can think of Aries as the spark that starts the fire, as the initial spark, the spark that triggers everything that comes later.
It does, yeah. And also just the fact that it's a spring equinox. Yeah. It officially brings the spring. As a matter of fact, all the cardinal signs initiate a new season. It all starts with the equinoxes and the solstices. Aries is just the first sign. It's when astrologers usually celebrate what we call the astrological new year. So it is very important for us. And because it brings this energy, I feel like also personally, even before I knew astrology existed, I always felt this huge shift that happened. Because I think, going from the Piscean energy into the Aryan energy, it's like a very big shift.
Yeah,
maybe one of the biggest ones.
Totally.
And I always felt this huge turn of events. And then, when I understood that, it is actually like some sort of new year, it made so much sense that that would be around that time. I was like, wow, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that we made pretty clear why the sun is exalted in Aries, but why is Mars the ruler of the season, of this sign? Well, that's because in spring, after the spring equinox, you immediately see the flower blossoming, the trees growing, and the nature is just turning back, it's flourishing. In order to do that, it needs to have a lot of strength. And the flowers are also the reproductive part of the plants. In spring, the animals also start to reproduce. And so Mars carries the potential for life that turns back. Mars is the strength of the nature that awakens and flourishes. And it really takes a lot of strength in order to do so after the winter.
Yes. I'm also thinking about how people always say, plant your seeds during that time, and how the seeds need the most nourishment and energy to do that thing of starting to sprout, because after that, of course, the plant needs nourishment and everything, but that's that's the first birth that happens, and that is Aries. That is the part that requires the rebirth and the strength from the cold winter and what we need. And it is
Yeah.
very Martian in that sense. And I think also for us humans, we feel that like
Yeah.
the energy is different. We're just like, oh, I'm ready to do things again, to start things again. And you don't
Yeah.
even have to know astrology to feel that. People have
Yeah.
felt that for centuries, since thousands of years ago. The seasons have been celebrated anyways,
Yeah.
much more than they are today. So
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And it's exactly because of the strength that Mars brings to the sign of Aries that Aries is a cardinal sign. So like we need strength to initiate a new season because it's a new section of the year. It's a new weather, a new season. And I think that we can also talk about the comparison between Aries and Scorpio since we are focusing so much on the seasons. Because Scorpio is also ruled by Mars, but it's a different Mars. It's a Yin Mars. It's the Yin sign of Mars, the also called feminine sign of Mars. And still, like Scorpio carries some energies because in Scorpio season everything dies, but like the plants and the organism just like lose a little bit of themselves, like the tree that lose their leaves, but they still hold energy and they have this resilience to go throughout the winter and to the cold season. So like the Scorpio is a Mars that has strength to go towards winter, autumn, the dark. It's the resilience necessary. It's the power that it's necessary to keep going until spring, and then until spring it's like here he is. It's the strength of letting out the energy you've stored thus far. So I really like this comparison between the season of like Mars in the dark season, we could say, so the yin side of the year, because it's everything dark from the autumn equinox on till the spring equinox, and the light side of the year, which is from the from the spring equinox to the autumn equinox. So I think it was the moment for this comparison.
yes, and I'm also thinking how usually around Scorpio season is like the last time that you would really, cover up your garden, all the crops and everything. Let what can grow during winter grow, and then the rest definitely like reached its seasonal limit. And what does it do then? It begins, especially in the forest, right? Like it begins to compost, it begins to go underground
Mm-hmm.
to nourish the earth, perhaps more invisibly. And that is like maybe the more feminine principle, if you want to say
Yeah.
it that way, is to nourish the strength within. Whereas Aries is more so like the external strength
Mm-hmm.
that comes afterwards. And both are equally important
Yeah.
in that
Yeah.
sense.
I think we could say like the strength of internalize and in Scorpio season, and the strength of externalize in your season, which is really beautiful and poetic. Um, and it's Mars and Scorpio are just generally in their season we can see that death is quite important to maintain life, and vice versa, because without that death process of the leaves and the decomposition um, carried out by the microorganism, the ground wouldn't be fertile. So we need that to give the strength back to Mars and Aries season in general.
Yeah, I generally see Mars as a very rebirthing planet. Um, and I think it's the same thing that a lot of people in modern astrology would associate perhaps more with Pluto and
Mm-hmm.
Scorpio. But it actually makes a lot more sense. Of course, Pluto has these types of qualities as well, but we shouldn't underestimate the margin qualities around that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like for us both, when we really got to know the planets, the connections made much more sense to the signs. I think we both think that the planets are the first thing you should learn about and are more important than the signs.
Yeah, 100%.
Because signs give much more of like a taste and a flavor to it. But you have to know Mars to be able to know Aries and Scorpio. You don't have to know Aries to know Mars. Like, it's much more important to know the planet first.
Yeah.
And then the signs make more sense.
That's also why we started the episode by saying Aries is the exaltation of the sun. It's the domicile of Mars, because the sign kind of take their signification by means of the dignities of the planets in that sign, which is really an important side. Also, especially a focus of the Hellenistic practice. It's maybe more lost in modern times, but it makes so much sense. Also, between Aries and Scorpio, we can see the difference between the cardinal strength of Aries and the fixed strength of Scorpio. Because once again, I will repeat it: Aries initiates, is the strength to initiate something new, whereas the strength of Scorpio as a fixed sign is the strength to endure. It's the resilience, is the strength to stand hard condition. So here we can see like the difference between the cardinal and the fixed, which is really important, not just from yin and yang, but also that.
Exactly. And I think we can also just briefly talk about the exaltation of Mars itself, which is in Capricorn. And it makes sense because Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. And if you combine, a Saturn-ruled sign and its exaltation Mars, so take Saturn and Mars, that will give Mars like the strength to endure for a long time and do things, with long-term goals. So that's why Mars does really, really well in Capricorn, actually. And this is also how you can differentiate. Okay, Mars and the Sun, when you go with Aries, it's a much more initiating quality than if you take Saturn and Mars. So, and in Scorpio, it would just be Mars in that sense, because there isn't an exaltation in Scorpio, but we're not going to go in depth now as to why there is no planet exalted in Scorpio. We're probably going to keep that for a Scorpio episode.
Yeah, probably. We both have prominent Scorpio placements, so we are talking a lot about Scorpio as well. We are biased. I'm sorry, but I'm sure that we might have also many Scorpio listeners. It's a Scorpio thing. I think that Scorpio attracts Scorpio somewhat.
It definitely does.
Yeah.
We both have a lot of Scorpio and Capricorn placements for that.
And Capricorn, yeah, exactly. So I also have to spend some words onto why Mars is exalted in Capricorn. I think that it's interesting because, of course, Capricorn is still in the winter season where everything is bad. But, still, again, we have the strength of winter, the strength to resist winter, but also to do things long term, as you were saying. Because usually we have this difference between Saturn and Mars, where Mars is much more explosive and quick and fast. Mars likes fast things, whereas Saturn is slow. Saturn is slow. So, as you were saying perfectly, the Mars in a Saturn-ruled sign might speak to a long-term focus and the energy to focus on the long-term project.
Definitely. I think each have their own quality. And I think Mars and Aries is very good if it's in, its prime form at doing things intuitively in the moment. Or I guess you could also say the word spontaneity or impulsivity. That was the word I was searching for.
Yeah.
Come forward. And impulsivity, right? I think it has connotations of also being a negative thing, can be a negative thing. I think it can also be a very positive thing when you intuitively feel the impulse to do something. That is also being impulsive.
Yeah, 100%. Aries is definitely an impulsive sign due to the quickness of Mars. It's impatient. That's also why Aries are very impatient usually. But, the fact that Aries is impulsive has a lot to do with the fact that in spring, the animals, the nature kind of follow their instinct. There is this instinctual component of Aries. And if you also look at this, the symbol of the sign is the sign of the ram. It's like a ram just pushes with his head and horns, like with a Mars-like determination. So we have this instinctual, almost bestial force and impulse. You just know that you have to push hard, and you push hard. That's the Aries energy. You have that impulse to go out and do your thing, and you just go out and do your thing. Aries is a good sign for people that like adventures, because Aries energy is not scared to go out, do things, do new things.
Yeah, I think it's a very daredevil
also
type of energy. Where it's like,
Mhm.
oh, you dare me to, go into the forest by myself and do this thing. Okay, I'll prove you I can do it.
Yeah, I will go there. Yeah, and if we also combine the fact that Aries contains both the exaltation of the sun and the domicile of Mars, sometimes we can see a lot the hero archetype. Aries tries to be the hero, or tries to fight, but with nobilities, like a noble mission. I'm gonna fight for this cause because I think it's a noble cause, but I think it's related to nobility in some sense. It's kind of guided by a solar principle. The action of Aries can be both instinct, as we were saying before, but also by an idea, a mission. Aries people are good people to follow a mission. They have mission, they want to go there. It's literally, you want this, you are inspired, you are guided by this solar idea, by this guiding principle, so you go there. And honor, it's also something very important for this sign, for this reason.
Yeah, I think Aries in its best is like when they find their like, I don't really like to use the word higher purpose. But I just mean like if they have like the right principles, they do something, because I guess the downside of Aries can also be just fighting for the sake of fighting, or doing something for the sake of feeling like you need to do something. And then the energy is, like the potent martial energy is just dispersed in useless things. But when you can focus that energy on something, that actually comes from the heart, you could say it in that way, then you're really fighting for a cause. And then when you focus that, it can be a really, really motivating force for other people, and a very good leadership quality.
100%. We can also, and that's also probably due to the fact that Aries, again, it's cardinal sign. Cardinal is very good to initiate things, but then the energy can be dispersed a little bit. So when Aries has really like a mission, an objective, an aim, it's maybe more constructive, because the energy, the cardinal energy, can be directed, which can be helpful. But hey, Aries without a scope is just, I don't want to say it's just, but it can be also like, for example, the need of, doing sport, for example, because this energy has to be used. The energy has to flow somewhere, and physical activity is usually one of the way in which this energy is used. But that, of course, it depends on the rest of the chart of the person, but physical activity definitely is. It's definitely a need to use this energy.
Yeah, or just something where it requires a lot of because I'm thinking, for example, well, maybe a Mercury in Aries wouldn't maybe need so much physical energy, but it would like to be somewhere where there's a lot of like mental focus that needs to be directed at once. or well, no, emotions
Yeah.
can be let out, like um, stuff
Yeah.
like that, like rage therapy.
Yeah.
There
Or
is, by the way, truly rage therapy. It actually exists. There's a, and I've never done it until now, but I've always wanted to do it. But it's called like rage rooms, and you can actually go there, and they give you like a bat or whatever, and you can just like destroy things for like half an hour or something, just to like let it out. And I love
yeah,
that. That's like an amazing way to let out your energy
I,
without, harming yourself or anyone else. And you feel cool
I
doing
love
it,
that.
probably.
We should go there after recording this episode, just to celebrate in a rage room. That would be so appropriate. Yeah, definitely the rage room is a thing. It's also a need, when a person is angry as fuck and just breaks things down. Okay, it can be dangerous. You can hurt yourself if you break too many stuff, for example, if you punch the wall. But sometimes there is the need to do so. There is the need to let your rage out. Aries is not a sign that likes to be repressed. No one likes to be repressed, of course, but Aries particularly has this instinct of being in contact with their own energy. And the repression of energy, it's not something for Aries. But I think that might be related with the fact that, not related, but we can also talk about the fact that Saturn is in its fall in Aries. And Saturn is a planet that slows things down, wants things slow. Whereas Aries again is impulsive, wants the energy to flow, but Saturn is there and says, no, you slow down. The energy cannot flow as smoothly as you wish. So that's also an interesting feature. It might be one of the reasons why Saturn is in its fall in Aries.
Yeah, it is of course also in its fall because Saturn rules during the winter,
Yeah.
and also my gosh, my cat. Okay, sorry. Because Saturn rules over the signs in the winter, and Saturn is the exaltation of Libra. And when does Libra season start? At the autumn equinox, when the darkness overtakes the light. So
Yeah.
a sign that does very good in the light half of the year obviously wouldn't really like the dark half of the year because it's not the
Exactly.
potent energy. And talking about repression, I mean, it is a big term, and I think I just want to speak more about like feeling repressed, not about the term repression, because
Mm-hmm.
that is a very big term to just throw around. But Saturn and Aries can definitely feel that, and
Yeah.
this can happen in various ways, depending obviously on which house it's located in your natal chart and everything. But it can all the qualities we talked about that are more positive can kind of have a more bad effect when Saturn is in Aries. So it might be people that struggle with impatience or struggle with expression,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
do feel repressed in their own way or world from many
Yeah.
things, feeling like you need to hold back, you can't really do the things that you would like to do.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's also why, as you mentioned, it's like Saturn is exalted in Libra because the light will decrease from Libra on. So Saturn like decrease, and Aries likes increase. They are the opposite. So there is a lot about the Aries Libra axis because they really divide the year between the light and the dark part of the year. So this oppositional quality is definitely there for why Saturn is in its fall in Aries, and it's just an archetypal opposition.
Yes, and I often look at opposing signs as like the same coin from different sides.
Mm-hmm.
um because they usually share, I mean, no, they do share very similar qualities. Although I must say, I still think to this day the Aries Libra axis is maybe the most different one. or the most weird one to combine, if I can put it that way. Because they still feel the most different to each other than if I compare it with the other, opposing
Hmm.
signs.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like what you just said. If you look also the other two signs that rules the beginning of the season, the other two cardinal signs that are Capricorn and Cancer, you can see the more nurturing qualities in Cancer and the harshness in Capricorn, the harshness of death and reality and the cold of winter. But it's the Capricorn Cancer axes are yin sign, our feminine sign, and they kind of complete each other a little bit more. Whereas, like, since Libra and Aries are both yang sign or masculine sign, they have the feeling that they really both want to go in the opposite direction. It's more active. Their opposition is more active, whereas the opposition between Cancer and Capricorn is more passive. It's like, I'm like this, but it's okay. We just want different things. Whereas Aries and Libra are like, no, we literally want different things. Like, it's, I don't know if it makes sense how I phrased it, but I think that the fact that these axis is a masculine axis is definitely one of the reasons.
Yeah, I'm also thinking about the fact that, again, Aries would be, Mars and the Sun, and Libra would be Venus and Saturn. And it's definitely two different energies in that sense.
I can also talk by experience, for example, because I'm a Libra moon, and my boyfriend is just a Aries moon, and even though it's true that opposite attract each other, it's always funny between me and him because it's always like, he says something maybe in a harsh way, but it's on instinct, it's instinctual for him. And I'm like, yeah, but be polite, It's this opposition that is always going on, but it's very fascinating because I feel that maybe Cancer and Capricorn, it's easy to find a common ground, maybe Capricorn and Cancer find a common ground for the home, for the family, where Capricorn says we have to make sacrifice, and Cancer it's like, yeah, but let's not make too many sacrifices so we have time for the family and we can stay together. And Capricorn is like, yes, that's true, but we have to still make this sacrifice. Whereas like, just Aries and Libra sometimes feel like, yes, no, yes, no. There is less of a common ground in this sense.
Yeah, it just feels like, because obviously I know a lot of people say Libra is indecisive, and there's obviously truth to that, but there's reasons for that. It's not just like a sweet stereotype, because it's, again, if you think about, a Venusian sign and its exaltation in Saturn at the beginning of the fall equinox, there's a lot of weighing to do, a lot of like, ooh, how do we, prepare now for this darkness season, and just taking a lot of responsibility for that. I feel like the why Libra is so indecisive, because it usually is because Libra would want everybody to have, a good
Mm-hmm.
time, and for everyone to get some equality. And I think that's what both can learn from each other. I think
Mm-hmm.
Aries can learn to maybe be a little bit more relating towards each other.
Yeah,
And also think about other people and take them into account. And Libra can learn to stand up for themselves a bit more, and
yeah, and take decisions.
and take the decisions.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, that's true. I agree 100%. Aries can really teach to Libra, to stand up, take the decision, be sure about yourself, and do not think twice sometimes, because the Libra is a sign of the scale. So Libra, before making a decision, is gonna take time, is the exaltation of Saturn, and try to please everyone, to make the best choice for everyone. And sometimes Aries is just like saying to Libra, no, sometimes you have to put yourself first, because it's sometimes you are first, and that's okay with it. Whereas Libra sometimes might teach to Aries to self-sacrifice, or sometimes to just shut up, to not hurt other people's feelings. Because, for example, some Aries character can be perceived as rude, but actually they don't want to hurt anybody. They just talk according to their instinct. And Libra can really say, yeah, I get that this is part of your instinct, but consider a little bit, the audience you're talking with. Consider the other people that you're talking with.
Yeah. Also, we didn't mention that, but talking about Libra and especially Venus, Venus is in its detriment in Aries, as is with all the, Mars, Venus signs. Both are, how do I put this? Basically, all the Mars signs are in its detriment in the Venus signs, and vice versa.
Yep.
So the relating quality isn't there so much. Mars is much more about cutting things off, which is also a quality that is absolutely needed. But the relating factor can sometimes miss a bit. And I also like to think, or what I think about sometimes, is that if we look at the sign that is before Aries and the sign that is after Aries, on one hand, we have Taurus that is also ruled by Venus. And on the other side, we have Pisces that is ruled by Jupiter. So we have both benefic planets next to the malefic planet. So
yeah,
there's a lot that, Mars needs to learn about from the benefic planets.
Yeah, no, it makes so much sense. I like this point of view. Yeah, sometimes, but also in Scorpio, it's the same thing. Like the sign before Scorpio,
yes.
it's Libra, and the sign after Scorpio, it's Sag. So it feels like sometimes Mars has to learn how to, be more nice with other people, and that's the benefic quality. And regarding Venus in Aries, for example, it definitely, I would associate Venus in Aries like the strength of a woman to stand up for her own. But that's something that we absolutely need as women, and it's super correct to have. But at the same time, if you like sometimes you can just care more about yourself than other people, and it's maybe not the best nurturing Venus, a Venus in Aries. Venus in Aries wants to do her own things for her own goods, and not necessarily for other people. Or maybe can be more aggressive and to fight for other people. There is this maybe more womanly margin quality of fighting for other people, which can be a thing.
Yeah, definitely also very passionate.
Yeah.
I think both Venus and Mars are very passionate, but in different ways. But both are, at the end of the day, Mars and Venus are each other's secret lovers. So as much as they would want to be apart, they kind of just always find the way around each other to spend time with each other and secretly love each other. So
yeah, it's an interesting opposition. Yeah, it's an interesting archetypal opposition. And if like sometimes Venus in Aries, or also maybe more Venus in Scorpio, but it's like the passion of that deep relationship, which sometimes hurts as fuck, but then it's so passionate and you just keep going on that relationship. It's just an example, of course. It doesn't mean that if you have a Venus in Aries, you're going to be doomed, or none of this. But it's an example because it's Venus in Aries is like romance fulfilled with obstacles and things to fight for. But all of this fight, it's kind of passionate.
Yeah, it definitely feels like someone that would want to fight for somebody's love, not just receive it.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely. And I think what is also fun to mention, and we do that often, it's like, well, how can you imagine, you know, uh, the planets in the signs? And I
Hmm.
think we both like to imagine the zodiac signs as like hotels or something, like living spaces. And then the planets go and visit there for
Yeah,
however long it is.
yeah.
And it's like imagine the Aries hotel, right? It's probably, since Aries is ruled by Mars, it's probably like, knives are laying around.
Hmm.
Again, there's definitely a rage room there.
Yeah, that's true.
Stuff like that. And then imagine Venus comes there and he's like, "Oh, hey, Aries hotel, I'm gonna like spend the
Stay
next
here.
4 or 5 weeks here." Um, Venus is probably not going to have the easiest time in such a room, in such a space,
Yeah,
because Venus would much rather, connect things and pick flowers and make nice dresses. And then it's like, oh, but like, what do I do with all the knives laying around? Like, it's kind of bloody
yeah. But
here. Did somebody like kill someone here? Like, what happened?
yeah, yeah, she's kind of like that. Like, what am I going to do with all of these knives? But at the same time, she's like, yeah, but maybe something turns me on here.
Some things, yeah,
Yeah, you
for
know,
sure.
there is yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
same
That's
with
that's a that's a visual. Go ahead. Don't worry.
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, like, I'm same when you turn it around. Like, if you imagine, Mars going into Libra, if we want to take that axis into
Oh
account,
yeah,
well, it's going
that's
to be the
true.
same thing. But again, Mars might maybe even enjoy, like, okay, I'm going to chill in this pool now. Okay. And now because
Ye-
I'm such a hot planet, it's going to become a whirlpool. Or like,
Yeah,
I
well,
can
I see more,
create
more
art,
Mars in here
but
is like Mars enters Lib. Sorry, yeah, art is a
yeah,
thing.
the connection was lagging a bit. But just like, okay, I can create some art or whatever, like a Venusian thing. Well, it's definitely going to be art. It's going to be art in a margin way. It might be,
Yeah,
I don't know. What do I think of when I think of margin art qualities?
I have a good example, but it's not for art. Which is like basically I used to know this person that has Mars in Libra in the 10th house, and he really likes and he really enjoyed the Swiss Army. But it was like before of entering the army, it was like, yeah, but I don't really like violence. And after the army, it was just saying, yeah, but the Swiss army is just for protective reason. It has a protective function for the country because Switzerland is a neutral country. So it's literally being in the army to protect the country, but in a neutral country, in a country that naturally doesn't want
Yeah.
to get involved with conflicts. That was such a good example, in my opinion. It's like, yeah, I'm going to learn to fight, but just to protect. I don't want to do any attack. I just, I
Yeah, for
want to be
sure.
peaceful, but in case it's more the defense.
Definitely.
And yeah, uh, and yeah, that's also something very Swiss, I guess. The fact that Switzerland is neutral, so avoid as many conflict as possible. And Mars in Libra is, I think, it's a planet that tends to avoid conflicts. It's not very good in dealing with conflicts because Mars likes to fight back, but in Libra, it has difficulties just naturally to fight back.
Yeah. Or it would be somebody that is again fighting, but then like with art, since a lot of artists also, I don't just mean, paint, I just mean all the artists, like whatever your art is. But it would just be like, okay, instead of fighting, I'm gonna like, dance. I'm gonna dance in this way where I'm really expressing my rage at the government or whatever. I'm not hurting anyone, but I'm expressing it.
Yeah,
Or okay, I'm gonna do this paintings, which are very expressive of my emotions of rage, but I'm not hurting anyone in that sense. But I'm still expressing something
Yeah,
through the arts in that way.
yeah. I love what you just said about the protest, yeah, different like social purpose. Like, of course, in some protests there is a lot of violence going on, but then we have peaceful protests and manifestations, and people just protest, but they dance, and they dance with tons of music, and they maybe block the street for 1 day or 2 days, and the city it's cannot work anymore because people is just making a protest, but people there are dancing. And the act of of protesting is just by blocking the thing, but it's more passive. They are not hurting anyone. They are just saying, hear me out, or I will keep dance, or I will keep making noise.
Definitely, yeah.
And I think it's also a good example because Libra is such a diplomatic sign. So the example fits well also for this reason. Maybe fight for more political interest. Aries in Libra that always tries to find the right solution, and is it's an air sign which can be related to the intellect. It's a sign that has an affinity definitely with politics.
Okay, so I think this is everything we have to say for the Aries episode. Again, this is new to us, so there's still a lot of practice that we both need. And even though we talked a lot, we probably forgot many things, and we will get better along the journey.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're excited to grow on this as well. We are just like Aries right now. We are planting our podcast seeds to see where this evolves and goes.
Yeah, it was the first experience, guys, for us today. So thank you very much for listening, and we will definitely see each other on the Taurus episode because there's going to be one.
Yes, thanks for listening, and bye, guys.
Bye.